Thursday to everybody. Happy Thursday. Thanks for being here. Thanks for stopping by. If you are on here, please get those likes up, tag anybody on this discussion, or share it with someone that you think may find it interesting. I'm excited about today's conversation. I'm going to have a special guest come on who is going to just discuss why Black people need reparations. So I'm excited to have her on and just to share her experience and her understanding on this topic. So without further ado, I'm going to bring her on and we're going to get started with today's conversation. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good.
Thank you again for being here and sharing your Thursday afternoon with me. I'm excited to hear just your perspective and some of the different work and understanding that you have related to this topic. So thanks again for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so just to get right into things, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Jessica Ann Mitchell Aiwuyor. I'm a communications specialist with a background in Pan-African studies and communications, and I'm the founder of the National Black Cultural Information Trust.
Okay, awesome. So I know you mentioned you've done a lot of work in Pan-Africanism. My first question is, since you've done a lot of work in sharing the history of the Pan-African origins of reparations, why, in your opinion, do you think so many who are in favor of reparations online attack Pan-Africanism?
I think it has to do with a general misunderstanding of what Pan-Africanism is, coupled with misinformation that has been shared online. Generally speaking, Pan-Africanism is essentially Black collective activism. When you realize and break down how we've went through the transatlantic slave trade, and that has affected African Americans and other African descendants across the diaspora, as well as folks on the continent that have endured both slavery and colonialism. What you will see is that we're battling global white supremacy. And the best way to fight back against global white supremacy is to have united fronts. So I think part of the misunderstanding is some people have, upon their first introduction of the term Pan-African or Pan-Africanism, they have been taught that it means that we're just flattening Blackness, or that it means that we don't have our different ethnicities or nationalities. But that's not what it means at all. You can totally embrace your own ethnicity, your own nationality, and still participate in Black collective activism. That's all essentially that it is.
Okay.
We have our differences, but we also are interconnected. It recognizes those interconnections in order for us to move forward cohesively and fight back against global white supremacy.
Okay. So you're saying Pan-Africanism, really what it is, it's a place where you recognize and honor the differences that Black people across the diaspora have, but it focuses more on the unity and how to work together collectively to essentially fight white supremacy and different discrimination that we all experience, no matter where you're at.
Yes, so, I mean, we have cultural unifiers as well, but it's not a type of erasure that tells you have to erase your ethnicity or erase your cultural background or historical differences. We actually learn more from each other in the Pan-African world when we uplift some of these differences, because then we see the different ways in which white supremacy has been attacking us. We can learn from each other, and then we can work towards a united front.
Okay, very, very interesting. If you're on here, please get those likes up. Tag anybody on this discussion who you think may find it interesting. We are talking about why Black people need reparations. And I'm so excited to have a special guest on today who is just sharing her understanding of this topic and things related. Okay, so on to the next question. How does immigration from the African diaspora affect the Black community?
I think that this conversation is largely, especially in online spaces, being guided by, I I wouldn't even say information, but propaganda shared by right-wing conservative sources that
Okay.
that consistently push this narrative that Black and brown immigrants are the problem for Black Americans. But
Mm.
let's go back a little bit. If you look at, let's say, the conversation on affirmative action, most people realize by now that the biggest benefactors of affirmative action are actually white women.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. That's true.
And, on a similar front, there are way more white immigrants, way more European immigrants that come into the United States.
Mm.
So, what we're being told is Black and brown immigrants are coming to replace us. I've even heard people use the phrase replacement Negroes, or that they're working with the white establishment, which we already have enough African Americans doing that. We already know, like, that's not exclusive to one group of people.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it has a lot more to do with understanding how immigration works in the Western world. In the Western world, the birth rates are significantly lower than other parts of the world. And so, one of the ways that Western countries increase their population or continue a buildup of population is through immigration. And so, what we do in a lot of these conversations is hyper focus on Black and brown immigrants, while white immigrants get away scot free. And the white population, and let me just also go back to government. This is something that Trump was trying to do and others were trying to do. Make sure that it's easy for Europeans to come into the United States and make it as hard as possible for Black and brown immigrants to come. And when they do get here, they're hyper criminalized and more likely to be deported.
Yeah.
So these are the facts. And so what happens is, while all these things are happening at the same time, the white population benefits and grows from European immigration. And there have been people pushing to stop or lower Black and brown immigration. If we do that, if we start buying into that rhetoric, what we're going to be doing then is letting the white population, which is supposed to be a majority minority by 2050, which is what's really scaring a lot of conservatives and a lot of white nationalists, because they feel like they're losing ground with the race population. They feel like white should always remain the majority.
Mm-hmm.
So if we buy into this, while they're making it easier for European immigrants to enter this country, we become a group that, while we think we're protecting ourselves, becomes more and more siloed. The white population continues to grow. The Black population is stagnant or decreases.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I look at Black immigration is an opportunity to expand, an opportunity for expansion and collaboration.
Very, very, very interesting. And I know you mentioned making it harder for immigrants, Black immigrants, to come over and easier for immigrants from different European nations to come over. Are you referring to different laws or different things, or just the way that it's, I guess, interpreted that would make it harder?
It's different laws. It's
Okay.
different, and it's the removal of certain immigration policies that would have made it easier for more Black and brown immigrants to come. There were different lottery systems that were removed. There was more. There was, especially under Trump, when he was trying to do all these extra restrictions, they made it harder just for people to visit, literally just to visit their own family. So it wasn't even necessarily just the immigration issue. They made it harder for Black immigrants to visit their families. And then, on one hand, people think, okay, that only affects them. That doesn't affect Black America. But I can tell you personally, I have received phone calls from Black American friends that are married to Black immigrants or work with Black immigrants, and families are having difficulty, or they're having difficulty receiving family members just off even if they have their own visa. So
Wow.
It's a complicated thing, and I think that when we have to question the source of a lot of these conversations. Right now, I see a lot of people promoting a new book by this man named Roy Beck on immigration affecting Black communities, and he is a white nationalist. We can't get our information on how to treat other African descendants based on white nationalists because we know what their end goal is. So we should be smarter than that, than to promote their work and to listen to them on how we engage with one another. I do think we can have intelligent, in-depth conversations on the immigration issue, but I think we should be careful from different sources that are used in these conversations.
Very interesting. Very interesting. If you're on here, please get those likes up, tag anybody, or share it with somebody who you think may find it interesting. You made some really, really good points that I had never really considered. When it comes to this topic of immigration, Black immigration. I'll be honest, I guess I'm newer to how much tension, if you will, is behind this particular this particular idea. And to your point, it can be really easy, I think, to just kind of get pigeonholed or kind of get stuck in an echo chamber. So I think you always want to look at these things from different vantage points and make sure that you are actually seeing it for what it is versus taking in propaganda, like you said. So very interesting. Okay, so on to the next question. What do you know about the African origins of Christianity?
Oh, I think I actually just bought a book on this that will help to help me. But for me, I think one of my guiding points for understanding a Black liberation theology or African origins of Christianity for me is Kempa Vita. Kempa Beatrice Vita from the Congo Empire.
Yeah.
And I know that her introduction to Christianity was through the Portuguese. But what I find interesting is how quickly she was rejected from the Portuguese when she began to teach about a Black Christ and a Black Mary and Black origins, where her background, as she used to practice a traditional African spiritual system, and her background as I don't know the term for it, but her spiritual background and that kind of got infused into her Christianity, to where she was having encounters and spiritual realizations where her idea of Christianity was completely different from the European or the Portuguese. So that's my guiding point for the origins of at least Black American Christianity, because a lot of her followers, after she warned through prophecy that don't trust the Portuguese, they're going to sell you into slavery, they burned her at the stake and sold her followers into slavery. And they ended up in South Carolina and in Haiti. And they ended up fighting in the Stono Rebellion. And so this is like a huge grounding for Black liberation theology in Black America that a lot of people don't realize and don't know. So that's one of my major frame points.
Yeah, I had Dr. Vince Bonwan a few months ago, who is well versed in the African origins of Christianity, and I'm still doing a little bit of research on it myself. But what's really interesting, I actually did a few posts in the community tab that kind of started to show how a lot of the different biblical narratives and things that we read today, were found in Africa and different things like that, and recognizing that even some of the different ancient practices that you'll see among certain African tribes are very much linked to some of the practices that we see, ancient Hebrew. So there's a lot more of a connection that I even realized growing up in a different Christian church. I'm still learning about it myself, but I posted about Kimpavita earlier, and it's something that I'm still trying to understand. But it certainly to me broadens the perspective of what the message actually, I guess, of the good news is, because so often it has become, unfortunately, a tool to a certain extent to push propaganda, to push white supremacy, and that's really not what it's about when you really start to understand about it.
And also, speaking on piggybacking on what you were just saying, there are multiple origin stories that match the Christianity origin story of the Virgin Mary, or the Virgin girl with the child of God and this Christ, and a lot of those come out of ancient Kemet. So those are also like African origins or connections to Christianity that predate the Christian faith.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm familiar with that. So it's a bit of a rabbit hole, and like I said, to me, it's been interesting to learn, and something I want to continue to learn more, because it certainly, I think, shines a different light on the common narratives we hear today, the idea of Christianity being a white man's religion, all the different stuff that you kind of hear, just because we're seeing it from one vantage point and not being told the entire story. So very, very interesting. Again, if you're on here, please get those likes up and tag anybody on this who you think may find it interesting. We're talking just a little bit about reparations, why Black Americans need reparations, and a few other things. So on to the next question. So what is your view of Black Christians who say that voodoo or hoodoo is evil?
I think it stems back to this lack of understanding of the history of Christianity. I think it also, because there are plenty of things that Christians practice today that could also be connected to European paganism. So it's ironic to then turn around and accuse other Black folks that practice hoodoo and voodoo of being demonic or satanic or whatever. But I also think it is a part of the core issue of us needing full repair for the damages that were done during the Great Ma'afa, because we end up accepting the ideals that are largely anti-African about ourselves, largely dehumanizing ourselves. And so people start to, we've been taught from the very beginning, when we were brought to these shores, that our own religions and faiths are evil. And that is something that was taught by Europeans. The funny thing is, practices like hoodoo and voodoo are largely liberation faiths. Voodoo being used to free, being used as a freedom mechanism during the Haitian Revolution. Hoodoo being used by our African American ancestors as a tool for liberation, things that we would have to do in order to survive. And I think people just don't know these histories, and then begin to, I unfortunately, look at different faiths through a Eurocentric perspective. Another thing that I think is an issue is, if you are a Christian, truly, if the whole point is to follow Jesus Christ and his teachings and guide people based on these teachings, when has he ever focused on attacking people rather than feeding and guiding people? And so I think it just kind of goes back to the Eurocentric version of Christianity, which is the manifest destiny Christianity. The Christianity of genocide, the Christianity of takeover, and the Christianity of death and all of these things, and the Christianity of racism, and not the Christianity of understanding and faith and love and kindness and any of these things. I think we have to be really careful with the ideas we absorb concerning our faith, because it can easily be led astray. And that is why so many people have a problem with the Black church now, because of judgment and all these other issues. It wouldn't be, we wouldn't have this many issues, and this many people feeling hurt from Black churches or Black Christians if we weren't embracing, if we stopped embracing Eurocentric ideals of what Christianity or following Christ actually is.
Interesting. So you're saying, again, a lot of this at the end of the day comes from a lack of really understanding, what's going on, really understanding the historical framework. And again, it being used to push propaganda versus being used to understand what's going on and properly, properly operating the message, I guess, of the truth of the gospel. Because to your point, that's never about attacking anybody. But if we just focus on this is bad, that's bad, and never really seek to understand what's going on, then, that's what you're going to do. You're just going to start believing things that aren't necessarily true or that are just misinformed.
Yes, I think if we're going to look at first of all, I have to say clearly, I don't believe voodoo or hoodoo are negative or demonic or evil. I think that they are both beautiful African spiritual traditions that I uplift. On the other hand, I think that if we are Black Christians, it would behoove us to be more critical of white evangelicalism and the harm it has caused in the world. You cannot look at voodoo and hoodoo and see this massive harm. Hoodoo and voodoo has not caused genocide, has not caused the displacement of indigenous peoples, has not caused mass enslavement of our people. So we have to think critically about our own participation in about the things that we absorb in our faith that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, no, fair point. Like I said, this is something that I'm still looking into myself. I will be honest and say I was kind of one of those where it's just like, oh, this is bad. Mm-hmm. And then I remember talking to somebody one day, actually knows my husband, and he was like, okay, well, why? And I was like, I couldn't really give an answer. I was just like, I don't know, it's just bad, and then come to find out, like I saw a movie the other day. It was about, it was a scary movie. And I can't remember the title, but basically, no, of course the movie was written by a white person. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
But it was like a scary movie where the protagonist, she was a root worker, which we know, like the foundations of the Black church, and many of the pastors were like root workers, or, had connections to those spiritual practices. So, but in this movie, she's a root worker, but she's like killing people and, crushing up bones. Like I didn't see near herb or in there. But it was kind of this whole idea of like, if you just see certain imagery every single time projected this way, and then there's never a critical lens put on, I guess, what's widely accepted as mainstream Christianity or whatever, then it can start to subconsciously paint certain narratives without you going in, right, with an unbiased stance and just seeking out, okay, like what is the truth? What is healthy? What is not healthy? So very, very good points. Shout out to Conjiverse for the super chat. Okay, I see. Okay, so I see. Do you think Black church should embrace hoodoo voodoo on an institutional level? Interesting. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, but it looks like
I don't know. I don't know. I think that is up to people's faith. I think that's up to people and what they want to do. I think it's either up to, I think for me, I feel like faith is something, or Christianity, or the way that we embrace it, is really up to the individual and what works best for them. I don't think that there is one wholesale approach to our connections with God. I don't think that there is one wholesale approach to our connections with our ancestors. So I wouldn't necessarily force something on people on an institutional level, but I do think what the Black church could do is just provide more educational resources on Black history and African history for people to at least understand that, or at least get away from this whole African traditional religions thing is demonic. Like, I think we
Yeah.
need to that type of thing can really help to sensitize people to a better and greater understanding so that we don't continue to cause more harm in the same communities that we say we are protecting and want to sow seeds of love in.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, I think to your point, just having an understanding, because it's like, it says the truth will set you free, but you first have to know the truth. So it's like, I'm really cautious of one to say, oh, everybody needs to do this or it needs to look like this, because I'm like, everybody's so different and everybody's process is so unique. But I think to your point, having an understanding, being educated, just knowing the facts, I think that would do a lot as far as giving people the tools that they need to really have a better perspective and a better understanding of what it is they actually do say that they believe. So really great point. Also, shout out to, what is that? Friedman. Oops. Shout out to Friedman for the 5 on the super chat. I see another question. What amount of reparations per person takes this off the table? I don't know if you want to speak to that.
What is this? This off what table?
Yeah, I'm not fully understanding the question, but
I will make an assumption in Friedman's journal. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. If you're asking how much per person we should receive as for reparations, I don't know. I know that some economists say that reparations for African Americans goes up into the trillions. I've seen some people calculate as low as 3 trillion up to 11 to 14 trillion dollars. I don't know how that would be dispersed, how they would calculate the dispersal for that, but I do believe it is in the high trillions. I don't know about the individual payments, what that would break down to, though.
Okay. And Leah, it looks like he says the issue of reparations. I guess that's
okay. Yeah, taking that off the table. And I also want to add that reparations, we definitely want our cash payment. We want our money. But we have to also make sure that in advocacy for reparations, we demand more than money, because we are healing from way more than the racial wealth gap. We're healing from medical experimentation and negligence. We're healing from houselessness and housing discrimination. We're healing from being underbanked. We're healing from not having equal access to education. We're healing from mass incarceration. There's so many different things that are a part of this reparations conversation that we need to consistently remember and uplift.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because from what I've heard about, reparations, sometimes I feel like it can be simplified to just money. And you and I probably both know that there's a lot of people out there, they got a check in the mail, they would blow it within within days, weeks, months, depending on how big it is. So most people are arguing for just, oh, Black folks should all just get money and then that's going to solve all their problems. It's like, no, if we look at, you said, the wealth gap, the amount of incarceration, if you just understand the way laws have been not only implemented, but interpreted to negatively impact Black communities, specifically Black men. I mean, I even remember my husband telling me, he's an engineer, and he's explaining to me how in engineering, they would do certain things where they would create highways through Black areas, Black and brown areas, and do certain things to break down communities. So you can't look at the way institutionally things have been done to screw over Black folks and then just think, okay, we'll just go by the bootstraps individually and that's going to make it okay. Of course, there's always going to be a handful of people in the Black community who can do well, but by and large, the institution and the laws they're such that as a community, we're not supposed to do well. We're not supposed to. It's like, it's supposed to be just a handful and the rest suffer. So it's like, if that, again, if all those things are not addressed, I feel like, at least to me, it's like just getting a check in the mail isn't going to, it's not going to address all the different ways that we have, and in some ways still are being impacted. So
yeah, so like when you talk about the institutions, for example, one of the things, I used to be the communications director at the National Fair Housing Alliance. One of the things that I learned, and I mean, it's something other people may know already, but you know how how some people say the only color that matters is green, and I learned at my job that it isn't. Like that, because of the racism embedded into these certain institutions, like housing institutions, like rental places and folks that sell homes, and that whole industry, the housing industry, they will literally watch a Black community just crumble into pieces, and they will own the homes, and they will still watch it crumble. And they don't care about the money. They will not sell you the home. You could have the money. You could have more than the money they're asking for, but they will not sell you the home just because of your Blackness. One of the cases we were working on was we sued Bank of America. Bank of America was, when there is all these different foreclosures, the home returns to the bank. The house then is owned by the bank. It becomes a bank-owned property.
Right.
What they usually do in these neighborhoods where the bank owns the homes, is they send out vendors that they pay to go clean up the property, cut the grass, make sure the doors are on so that people can't break in and tear up the property, because they want to keep the property in good shape.
Yeah.
What they would do in Black neighborhoods when they had bank-owned properties is not cut the grass. The grass would be up 5 feet high. Let the doors get bursted open, windows, but the property value plummets, even though they own the home. They just don't. They would tell the vendors would say, hey, can we get paid to go clean this house? Oh, that area isn't a priority area.
Oh, wow.
So they lose money, but also the Black homeowners in those neighborhoods lose money too, because the property value goes down for the whole neighborhood, including the bank-owned homes. The whole point from that is we calculated how much money they were losing, and banks don't care that they were losing money. They just didn't care about, it was like the priority was also not caring about Black neighborhoods.
Very, very interesting and not surprising. I mean, if you just look at the way, like, roads, I think I live in a more of a suburban area, and it's like, I feel like every few months there's a road being taken care of. And I'm not too far from, you drive 20-30 minutes. It's like maybe considered a low income area, and it's like potholes have been there for decades. I'm not talking years, decades. And it's like, I mean, it's like, I don't need to get this road done over here. Like, you should put it over there, So yeah, that is crazy.
But my point behind that is, we get a check. That doesn't instantly mean we're accepted. It doesn't instantly mean everything just evaporates, all that institutional racism. That's why we got to couple it with making sure these institutions and institutional racism is addressed in the reparative justice package.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that makes so much sense. Okay, so on to the next question. How does your faith influence you to organize against imperialism and institutional oppression?
It's the main impetus behind it. I'm from a long lineage of pastors and deaconesses and deacons and all of the people, all of the churches in African Methodist, Episcopal, Pentecostal, and Baptist. All of the things.
Okay.
And, so my entire life's perspective has been on. I've always looked at I've always viewed the world through the lens of both my culture, my people, and my faith. So I've always, in following the steps of Jesus Christ, wanted to look out for the most oppressed. And it just so happens I come from the group of people in the United States that are among the most oppressed, So I've always wanted to work in a way that uplifts Black communities and decolonizes um, the institutions that cause these mass and institutional harms. Um, One of the greatest inspirations for me is my maternal grandmother, Virginia. Um, and one of the things that she used to do, I used to be with her, and I'm like in high school and with my grandmama riding around. I don't know what she was doing. She's packing up all these like sausages and bread and all this stuff. I don't know where we going. She's like, get in the car with me. We in the van, her big van that everybody still laughs about. And we're driving to crack houses, literal crack houses where people are dealing with um, uh, different illnesses associated with drug addiction. And she never was there to judge anyone. In fact, she didn't go there to preach to anybody. She went there to just give people food.
Yeah.
And brought me with her. She went there to make sure that her community was fed. She had a big peach tree and pecan tree, and you would have to go through the house to get to the backyard. People would knock on her door. Miss Jones, can I get some of your peaches? Can I get some of your pecans? And she would let people in, and they could get as much as they wanted. She would do people's taxes that didn't understand how to fill out the paperwork. For me, that's like my faith inspiration. Like she's Hattie Virginia Jones. And so the whole point for me to have this faith is to help people. And in helping people, help specifically my community and figure out ways to get us out of this mess that is white supremacy. So that's pretty much how my faith guides.
Very, very interesting. And that's a very powerful story. And I love how you said, she wasn't going trying to shove scriptures or certain beliefs down people's throats. She was just, being love. She was just being who she was. And the message of her life was actually what spoke to people, which is really what it's actually all about at the end of the day. We can all sit here and argue back and forth about what's true, if it's man-made versus of God. But, we can all do that. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to be your life. It's supposed to reflect something that is divine. So that's a really beautiful story. Again, if you're on here, please get those likes up, tag anybody, or share it with somebody who you think may find it interesting. Okay, on to the next question. Let me pull it up. Okay, so what are some of the ways that the Black community can organize against just disinformation or lack of, bad information out there?
Well, I think that one of the best ways, I honestly think that misinformation and disinformation is one of those things where, you can try as an individual person to fight back against it by sharing accurate information, by being hesitant to automatically retweet or repost something that you've seen on the internet. Prime example was the crack pipe thing that came out last week. Like, Biden is delivering crack pipes to every house. And it was just like, regardless of what people believe about, like, how you feel about the president or Democrats or Republicans or whatever, it just wasn't factual. It just wasn't true. But the thing is, it was an attention getter. It was something like, you see it, it's up there, like, whoa, and you get angry and we share it. And that was actually pushed by a right-wing website that people just didn't realize.
Oh, of course I didn't realize it.
Yeah, it was totally a right-wing website. Similar stuff with COVID misinformation, where most of the stuff that people are sharing are coming from right-wing sources, but they don't realize it. And so I do think it has to be more than the individual. I think like social media sites have to do a better job of figuring out how to control misinformation spreading on platforms while also allowing people to still express their freedom of speech. Um, I think that individually, the best thing I can tell people to do is try to question the source before you react to what you see on the internet, especially considering Black communities. And if it's something that's just outrageous, that's gone viral, that please go
Please look at the source.
and
Yeah.
look at the source. And it isn't just like misinformation, it's also manipulation. So sometimes bad actors on the internet are specifically looking for a reaction from the Black community to deter us from something. And so what they will use is factual information and twist the story a little bit to kind of move us in a certain direction. And there was a whole documentary about this done for I think it was the 2020 election or the 2016, I can't remember. But they took different news stories and literally micro targeted people. Like they knew they could micro target you down to like your last name, address, and where you work. And
yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that.
They were spending millions on advertisements to make specific Black communities not vote. And it worked.
Wow.
It totally worked. And it's one thing to say, I don't want to vote for these specific reasons, like I don't trust this government, I don't want to choose bad from bad. All of those are legitimate arguments. But it's another thing for certain entities, specifically right-wing conservative entities, to then take valid conversations and twist them because they want fewer Black people to vote in a district so that they can get what they want out of the upcoming election. So you have to be very careful. Facebook came under a lot of fire because most of those ads were purchased there, Facebook and YouTube. But be careful and know that also everybody that says they're Black on the internet is not Black. There are a lot of, I hesitate to say bots now, because what it is some of these are real people, but just tweeting specifically to make us believe certain things, to push certain narratives online, not just tweeting, but they're on different platforms as well. But people have to be careful. Please understand that the internet is one of those places where you can create realities. And there are different entities and bad actors that are working specifically for that purpose.
Yeah, I remember because I worked, did digital marketing for different companies, organizations for years. And I did quite a few ads, Facebook ads in particular, and you can get really particular. It can get kind of creepy how targeted some of these ads can get. And if you really want to push a narrative, if you really want to find a loophole, you can. I know. I remember. I feel like Facebook every few years is getting under fire under something, and I remember that time in particular where there were different stuff around like the election and misinformation, and Facebook hiding stuff. Like it's creepy, but you really can. It's relatively easy to push propaganda and messages just if you have a few dollars to spread. Through some of these different social media platforms. So, it can be used to spread good messages, but it also be used to spread the bad stuff, sadly. So now, quick question. You have an organization, correct, that really does focus primarily on this, right? Is it the NBCI Trust?
Yes, NBCI Trust, National Black Cultural Information Trust.
Yes, and did you want to talk a little bit more about that, or to share with those?
Sure. Sure. So, remember when I was saying earlier, there's a lot of times when we have these conversations online in like Black spaces or among Black people in different digital spaces. A lot of times there's so much misinformation that is shared, or people who are just genuinely uninformed and don't know.
Yeah.
So we are here to fill the gaps.
Okay.
So to provide information, cultural information about our communities, and also to counter false narratives um, or disinforming narratives that are being pushed or promoted in our communities.
Mm,
So that is one of the things that we do. I also make many African American history videos to kind of give people a better framework for understanding the origins of Black America, because a lot of that has been coming up recently with people believing that we either came from Mars or that we're the first indigenous peoples to the American. We could get into the argument over that, but um, so we are here to fill the gaps for where the misinformation is that are targeting our communities, but they're doing it in a cultural way. So I call it cultural misinformation and disinformation. They take our cultural conversations and
mm,
take advantage of them in digital spaces to spread misinformation.
very interesting. The first time I heard the idea of Black people coming from Mars was a few days ago, and I thought it was a joke. But that's like a real thing?
So much. There's how much time you got is
Am I gonna, I
there's
did,
so
am I
much.
gonna miss
It's a lot, but this is a part of the reason. This is a part of the reparative justice, though. You see, this is a part of why we need it, because we have part of it is um, our miseducation through white supremacy about who we are and where we descend from. That is the whole reason why Carter G. Woodson wrote the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, and founded Negro History Week. We were not being taught about ourselves, and we
Yeah,
still aren't.
yeah, that's
His
true.
main point was to teach us about what the Negro had done in the world, beginning with the great empires in Africa, the empire of Mali, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we get now is a generation of people with access to the internet, but also access to people that are spreading misinformation,
Yeah,
and they're doing it for profit. The
yeah,
people that are teaching you the hidden histories and all this are getting a lot of money out of
mhm.
teaching people things that are fake or false. And then there are people that generally are uninformed, and they are sharing that information that is false as well. And you
Yeah,
just get like this combination of things. It all has to go back. It all has to do with the harms done to us, as your viewer says, as Deas, descendants of Africans enslaved in the United States.
okay,
Um,
yeah,
those are part of the harms, because one of the things they tried to do was erase us and disconnect us from ourselves.
mm,
They tried to teach us that anything that was African was wrong or ignorant or stupid. And
yeah,
so you get people that are afraid of being African. It's Afrophobia. They are afraid of being African, and also did not get introduced to information or education about who we are early on.
yeah,
And now it's just easy for this type of stuff to spread. People will believe anything if there's someone there with a big enough platform to push it. So that's
yeah,
why there has to be that counterpoint. That's one of the things that we're doing at NBCI Trust, is tracking some of these things and trying to provide people with the information that they need in order to counter this misinformation, but also just learn for themselves.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm still trying to get over the fact that there's an idea that we're from Mars, but it seems like whatever's the most sensational, whatever's the most controversy is what tends to get the most views. It doesn't matter how relevant it is from a historical standpoint or how factual it is. It's more about how sensational it is.
Yes, and that's why I was saying it's hard for the individual person to control misinformation. Like, we can do what we can do. We can try not to share false information. We can question the source. We can do that. But these platforms like YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, they are algorithm based.
Yep.
You're fighting an algorithm. So
Yep,
once something, and we know through studies, research studies, that things that are controversy, like in the algorithm, are in love. So it just pushes it and pushes it and pushes it and pushes it. Even if you don't want to see it, it pushes it. And next thing you know, a family member is saying that, we came from a spaceship in Mars, because they've seen it and this person has provided documentation that they made up in their living room or whatever. And so that's how it goes.
Whew. That's deep. I don't know how else to put it. That's deep. All right. So you make some really, 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 really good points. Definitely, you guys be sure to check her out. I've left the information to her. You're on, it's TikTok and Instagram, correct?
Yeah, TikTok and Instagram. I'm also on Twitter. But
on Twitter. Okay.
I'm not as active on there, but I'm on there.
Okay. So yeah, definitely check her out. An organization if you would like to learn more. It's been some really good points that you've shared today. Okay, so on to the last question. As a mother of twin daughters, how do you hope to impact them and younger generations with what you're doing currently?
Oh, I hope that they are the next generation. That's pretty much, I hope that just like I watched my grandmother do the work that she did in the community, that they will watch me doing the work that I'm doing and want to do either something similar or take their own path. But whatever it is something that uplifts our communities, uplifts African American communities and the Pan African world. It's very challenging being a mom of twins.
I can imagine.
But one of the good thing, I mean, it's all great, but one of the really great things about it is that children help you to see the world in a different way. Like, when you talk to a child, you have to figure out ways, like, they don't necessarily understand all the big words that you want to say. So they ask questions about who is Black? What is Black? Mommy, is this person Black? Or what does it mean to their father is Nigerian? What does it mean to, are we Nigerian? Are we American? Like, these questions, and me talking to them about race and ethnicity and identity also help for me to better understand how to talk to other people. They might not be 5-year-olds, but having these conversations helps to just, because these are things that adults ask me, like on TikTok or in emails, or I get a lot of questions inbox to me on Instagram on different questions of race and ethnicity, and they're reoccurring. So it just kind of sharpens my sword in terms of not only do they learn from me, I learn from them on better ways to communicate some of these topics.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes total sense. And to your point, if you could raise up the next generation to do better and just to understand better, I mean, half the battle, because there's a lot of young people out there who are, thinking they're from Mars, and
or thinking that they didn't come from Africa. Like, that's the big new thing. Like, we didn't come from the continent of Africa, and it's just like, it's a big thing, and I'm concerned. Clearly there are Black Native Americans, but that doesn't mean we did not come from the continent of Africa. The Black Native Americans that exist are due to our ancestors being brought over here in the 1500s and so on, that mixed with local Native American populations. But
yeah,
but now the misinformation wheel is turning, and it's just going wild.
And this is because I think I've heard a little Yeah, I've been hearing about that. I've been a few posts on that, the idea that I guess Black people are the original. It's like another rabbit hole. It sounds like it's like another rabbit hole. But I'm like, from what I'm understanding, the historical and scientific evidence and data, like on all levels, points to the fact that majority of us came from the continent. I don't know. There's really no way to get around it. But for some reason, to your point, Afrophobia, for some reason, really does exist, whether it's a conscious or subconscious level. And it's like, it's almost like anything but Africa. I would prefer to be from anywhere, from any place but Africa. And it's a very strange phenomenon, especially to your point, when the evidence, the facts, the data, the science, the history, all of it point to an obvious fact. But then we go to something that is maybe anecdotal at best, or there's maybe partial evidence to support something, but it's inconclusive. I know it's a very interesting thing. It's a very interesting thing. So yeah, really, really, really good stuff. But I agree. I appreciate. Let's see. I appreciate you, being on here and sharing your perspective and just your thoughts on these topics, really. Is there any, I guess, final thoughts or things that you would like to leave with the audience before we wrap things up?
I just hope that we can get to a place where we do reach full repair, that we do get reparations, and that those reparations address all of the harms done to Black America. I hope that people continue to agitate and advocate for reparations. And in doing that, one of the things that people should do is immerse yourself in African history, immerse yourself in African American history to really learn more about not only what our ancestors went through, but how their lives were interconnected around the diaspora on the continent, and how we are connected to those histories and how it impacts us today. So I would just encourage people to do more reading, more studying, and to follow people like Dr. Carr at Howard University. He shares a lot of really great information. There's another channel on here, Home Team History. I feel like they share a lot of really great information. The Schomburg Center has a YouTube channel. They have good information. And you can go to our website at the National Black Cultural Information Trust, nbcit.org. We're going to be sharing more and more cultural information as well.
All right. Awesome.
And thank you so much for having me on your platform.
No, it was a pleasure. By the way, I love your earrings. Just total side note. And yes, thank you again for coming on and sharing your perspective, sharing your understanding on some of these different topics. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you have a good one.
You too.
All right. So thank you for those of you who tuned in and for hanging out with us this afternoon. It's always fun and enjoyable to have somebody come on and share their perspective. If you would like to check her out, I've linked the information to her organizations, her Instagram and her TikTok in the description box. So definitely check her out. She shares a lot of interesting information, as that is, one of her main goals is to combat misinformation or to share just facts, history, whatever that are maybe commonly not understood or not known. So, if you'd like to learn more, check her out. Also, again, thanks for listening in and stay tuned for other lives and other topics that we have coming up for the rest of the month. And yeah, we'll talk later. Bye.